Hi, my name's Alan Brown. I'm a technologist and entrepreneur, but I'm also a professor in digital economy at the University of Exeter Business School. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about digital transformation and the implications of digital transformation. I think it's a conversation we're all having one way and another in our organizations with our teams. It's something that I think is changing a lot about how we look at the business world today. But there's also an awful lot of confusion. It's a term that's used in many different ways by different people. And I'd like to take a few moments just to perhaps give you a little bit of a perspective, a little framework to think about what digital transformation means. And I think there are four kinds of different conversations going on today about digital transformation. And I'd like to talk to you about those. So what do people mean when they're engaging with you about this digital world and what it's going to do to the way we think, the way we work, the kinds of situations we find ourselves in the workplace? I think there are four areas. The first one is that we often get into conversations about the digital technologies themselves. So many organizations are going through technology upgrades of various kinds. Digital technologies have been used for many years. Everything from the introduction of simple computerization in the workplace so that we start to move from an analog way of working, maybe people filling in forms with pens and paper, to using those forms online, perhaps to more automated ways of doing appointments and people being able to give their information in different ways so that you don't have to repeatedly ask people their names and their address and their account numbers and so on. So we've seen that kind of early digitization for some time, but those technologies are constantly being upgraded. So in the workplace, there's lots of discussions about what happens when we bring in the new generation of technology. Will it make us more efficient? Will it help us to do more with less? So the first kind of conversation we get in are technological ones. What happens when we bring in this new software package? What happens when we introduce a new piece of hardware so that we have new laptops or new mobile phones or new ways of working using online services? A lot of that conversation is looking at how can we improve efficiency? How do we measure in the improvement? How do we look at the investment that we're making in relationships to the improvements that we'll see in the way in which we work today? But that's just the first step. The second kind of conversation we often get in takes us one step further than that. And it says, as well as the way in which we're using technology as an upgrade, we're using it as a way of communicating with our different clients and stakeholders. So it's about channels to market, channels to our stakeholders, channels to our partners. So a lot of the way in which we use digital technology is to improve the interactions that we have with our stakeholders, with our partners, with our clients. Of course, many of these kinds of activities are through websites. They're through online services. They're through online channels. So there's been a great deal of investment in thinking about how do we look at the way in which we engage with our clients so that they can not just receive information from us through some digital channel like a website, but also that they can feed back to us. They can tell us what their needs are. They can give us some information about how they're using our products and services. So these online channels, of course, creating apps for the mobile phone, creating new ways of interacting, have been an investment for some time. How do we look at the return on that investment? Often that's about the engagement. How often are people engaging with us? What kind of information are they sharing? How do we understand their needs more? How do we understand the way in which the products and services we offer affect what they do? So that's the second conversation. The third takes us into a different realm. The first two look at perhaps how we digitize what we do. The third starts to say, but doesn't it transform how we work? So the third is about the new ways of working. How do we operate in a digital world? How do we use these technologies, not just to automate or digitize what we did before, but actually to change how we think about what we're doing and how we operate? So for example, if we're working with clients and we're trying to ensure that we provide them the best service possible, perhaps we start to rethink whether they come in to visits, to meet with us, how we exchange information, what kind of information is necessary for us to be able to provide the best service to them, how we maybe mine the information that they've already given us in the past to suggest new things that they can do, so that we can become a little bit more proactive, predictive, maybe anticipate what their needs might be. So new digital technologies, particularly around the use of data, may help us to work in a different way. So when we do that, the investments we're making often are about what sometimes is called more intelligence or smarter technologies, often driven by things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, to use the data that we're receiving and to use it in new ways. And that changes the workplace, it changes how we operate, it changes the processes that we follow. So that can be quite disruptive. And the way in which we look at the return on that often is about, can we do new things in new ways, not simply replace the old ways? Are they more effective? Do they make clients perhaps welcome the services more or consume more of our service, or perhaps add a different value to the services that they receive from us? And then finally, the fourth kind of way in which we see this digital transformation is really about the way in which we create the new business models in which we engage with our clients and we work with our partners. Often the business model is, how do we create, manage, and distribute the value of our organization through the products and services that we offer. So for example, you see a lot of organizations moving perhaps from selling products to selling services, to selling access to those services, perhaps when there are high demands or constraints on those services, and then moving to selling the outcome of those services. We see more and more people wanting to move to these outcome-driven approaches, and we can do that because we're beginning to learn more through these digital channels about which services people consume, how they consume them, and what value they offer to different sectors of our client base. That digital collection of data becomes very significant in how we look at these new business models. It's why we can move to subscription models, to surge-based models, to demand-based or value-based models. These sorts of changes are very significant for organizations, and we see them in all forms of organization as we move to that view of what's the value we offer, how do we deliver that value, how do we understand the way people and clients consume our services so that we can maximize the value and maximize the return on that value that we create. So these are 4 different ways that we could begin to look at digital transformation: as a technology upgrade, as a channel to market, as a new way of working, or as a business model innovation. Often what we see in organizations is these get kind of mixed up. All of those conversations are taking place at the same time. So what I would encourage you to do is to think about digital transformation, the conversations you get into about digital technologies, digital transformation, in terms of these 4 areas. When are you talking about one or the other? Is the conversation on the same kind of language, using the same kinds of concepts, using the same sort of ways of thinking? Or when you're struggling a little bit, maybe step back and use this framework of 4 ways of thinking as a way of sort of picking apart the conversation so that you can move forward with people being on the same page. Hope that's been useful.